Today's Rants and Chats is going to be about a topic that, or I guess a myth that we hear really often, especially because my focus with women in my studio online is resistance training and teaching women to not be afraid of lifting heavy weights, that they're not going to walk out of, the gym looking like Iris Kyle, which if you don't know who that is, she is like the goat of bodybuilding. She's like she's done 20, she's got 20 titles. She's an IFBB pro bodybuilder, heavyweight. Like, women a lot of times think they're going to go in and like get on a leg press and like they're all of a sudden going to just sprout a bunch of muscles, and it just doesn't work that way. So a lot of what I feel like my work is in the realm of creating content and, emails and things like that is really educating women on how our bodies work. And we're not just small men, right? We're not going to walk into the gym and then all of a sudden start lifting weights for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 6 years and walk out looking like a man. It just does not happen. We do not carry nearly enough testosterone in our bodies to make that happen. And also, spoiler alert, because I have quite a bit of experience in the bodybuilding world, is that the women that you are seeing that are maybe giving a lot of us that perception that, oh, well, these women are so muscular and they lift weights. A lot of them are enhanced athletes, right? They're professional bodybuilders. I can speak to that myself personally. And so a lot of times they are taking steroids or they're manipulating their hormones or something like that. And for the average woman, that is just not usually happening and is not going to produce the same results by you getting in the gym and doing some like heavy resistance training. So anyways, if you don't train properly and eat properly, there is a possibility that you can end up looking bulkier. It does not mean you're going to walk out looking, like I said, Iris Kyle, this massive bodybuilder, Olympian, heavyweight female. It just means that you could be lifting and start to feel like you're looking a little bit puffier, or you're not really looking lean and muscular like these girls that are saying that they do these weight training workouts, right? I know a lot of times when we have newer women to weight training that come into my studio, I have a studio in Modesto, and they've never done weight training, and they start and they just do the weight training, right? Because we also do nutrition as well, but it's like a service that they can add on when they're ready if they decide they want to. And some girls are like, no, they really think that just the workout is going to be enough to give them these amazing results, which we always tell them you could lift weights or do cardio 6 days a week for an hour to 2 hours, does not matter. Trust me when I say this. If your diet is not in check, it does not matter. You're going to be improving your health, but if you want to change how your body looks, you want to get leaner, you want, to be more tone, most of that result is going to be driven by your nutrition. And it is like the thing that nobody wants to hear because it's not fun. Okay. It's not fun. The reality of it is you have to change your habits with your nutrition in order to see those changes. So if you start a weight training program or you start lifting weights, but you do nothing different with your diet, and your diet is, making you gain weight or maintaining, you could start to notice that your body shape is not taking an appearance that you love. Okay. Now, this does not mean that you are going to be at risk for developing like a bulky appearance. right away, but it is something you want to keep in mind, okay? Now, let's talk about the diet. And of course, at any point, if you guys have questions, feel free to pop them in the comments. To maximize your muscle gain and minimize your fat gain, you have to eat enough protein, okay? So if you are not consuming enough protein, you're going to struggle. Protein is essentially what your muscles are made out of. And if you aren't consuming enough, you're not telling your body, okay, I'm doing this training and I'm eating this food. Now it's like input. It's giving your body input. You're not giving it the right input. With protein, you can make sure that you're getting enough, and that is going to support your goals, right? Your goals for gaining some muscle and minimizing your fat gain. Now, with protein, I did a poll over on Instagram. So if you follow me over there, you saw I did plug in some stories. What was it, yesterday or maybe the day before? Just kind of like finding out where is my tribe when it comes to protein consumption, okay? You want to be consuming about 0.7 to 1 gram of protein per your current pound of body weight. So, for example, if you are 150 pounds, I'm just going to use myself, I'm like between like 150 and 155 on any given week, fluctuating somewhere in there. If I want to keep this muscle, especially because I have a long training history, meaning I've been lifting weights for a very long time, I'm going to want to err more on the side of the higher number, right? I'm probably going to want to get closer to 150 grams per day. Now, if you're newer to weight training, if you're not working out as frequently, if you're only in the gym a couple days a week, maybe you have a lot more body fat to lose. It's really hard and very disheartening for women who are, let's say, 180 to 200 to 250 pounds to think that they have to get 1 gram of protein per their current body weight. That would mean you're eating like 200 plus grams of protein for some people. And that's just not realistic. And it's not necessary. Ideally, you're going to be going off of your lean body mass. So whatever your lean muscle tissue is, right? Because we're made of muscle, we're made of bone, we're made of organs, all those things. And you really want to be going off of your lean mass number, which a lot of people don't know. So just FYI, don't feel frustrated or like, oh gosh, I can't do this because I don't know my lean body mass. That's okay. Yes, in a perfect world, you would know that. Maybe you get some kind of body fat testing done or something like that to really know. But for a matter of just not complicating things and just starting somewhere, start at the lower end of your protein needs being 0.7 and multiply that by your current body weight. If that number seems really high, really audacious, like a big, huge challenge, then, chop it down by like 10% or something. Start small and just get some wins with that. The reason why it's important is having that protein as a priority is going to be huge when it comes to your results from your training, okay? Now, if you are overwhelmed by the amount of protein you need to eat, it seems like the easy solution is like, okay, well, let's just break that down. Let's break that into baby steps and chunk it down a little bit smaller, right? Oftentimes, you're gonna need to break that down into several meals. And there's no magic when it comes to fat loss in terms of like, oh, you need to eat 6 small meals a day. There's no magic to that. The reason why bodybuilders do that, one of the reasons, is because they have to eat copious amounts of protein to keep their muscle tissue happy. And it is really hard digestively on your system to consume a ton of protein in one sitting, right? Imagine eating like 3 chicken breasts at once or 4 chicken breasts at once, right? Like just the thought of it, the thought of that sounds awful. So when you're trying to increase your protein, it just makes more sense to break it down into smaller meals. So that might mean 4 meals, 5 meals. And when I say meals, one of those meals might just be like a protein shake or a protein bar or something like that. It's really like a snack. It's just another way to get in some protein. If I lost you, if you got distracted, come back to me because this is super important. When you are choosing your protein, and this was actually something that came up in my polls over on Instagram, is that a lot of people struggle with their protein and also going over on their fat grams when it comes to counting macros. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's okay. Just stay here with me. Now, a lot of the reason why people go over their fat goals when it comes to tracking their macros is because they aren't choosing lean sources of protein, or they're eating carbohydrates that also contain fats, and they're maybe adding fats elsewhere. And so it's adding up really, really quickly. So one of the easiest ways to avoid that problem and also adding on more body fat is choosing lean sources of protein. Now, I know lean protein it kind of gets a bad rap sometimes because it's, it's drier. It's usually, like chicken breast, turkey breast, something like that. The lean protein choices are going to be your better bet, because what's happening a lot of times when people start lifting weights and they're like, oh, I'm going to eat more protein, right? Well-intentioned folks are just consuming more meats and proteins, hoping that that is going to be the cure-all and the answer for hitting their protein targets. But what they don't realize is that if they're eating fattier cuts of meat and things like that, they are going to put on body fat. That's just, if you're eating in excess of your body's needs for calories, you are going to put on body fat. Body fat over muscle gives that bulky appearance. So spoiler alert, you have just now learned the reason why people look bulky when they start lifting weights is because oftentimes they are consuming too many calories. And a lot of that is trickery by thinking, oh, well, I'm consuming more protein, so why isn't this working? Well, it's the kinds of proteins that you're eating. So lean proteins, let's just recap this real quick. I have a 23 protein snack download too. If you want that, let me know. But lean protein sources, you got chicken breast, turkey breast, lean beef. Okay. So lean cuts of beef. Flank steak is a really lean one. I just did that actually this week. I threw it in a crock pot with some seasonings, did a little like shredded beef moment. You want to think low fat dairy, some like Greek yogurt, eggs, egg whites. Eggs are going to have obviously the fat and the yolk. So I use those just sparingly. I'm not having like 6 eggs for breakfast. I'll usually do like 1 or 2 whole eggs and then like half a cup of egg whites, just to kind of, egg whites are like a sad looking meal, right? You look at your egg whites and you're like, you look just gray and sad. So 1 yolk is all I really need to just give it a little bit of life and a little bit of flavor and get those omegas and healthy fats in there. But not too much, because even though they're heart healthy and great for you and they have all of the nutrients and omegas that we need, too much is still going to put on body fat. It doesn't matter if it's healthy or not healthy. So you just have to be moderate with those things. Now, when you stick to lean protein without a ton of added fat, this is where you are going to keep your calories at a reasonable level. Okay, that is the most important thing. So if you take nothing away from this morning, and you're just like, what did she say? What was all that word salad? Keeping an eye on your protein sources and just making sure that they are lean is going to be your first step, okay? The other thing is going to be obviously monitoring your progress throughout your journey when it comes to weight training, and really get clear as to whether or not, okay, am I building muscle or am I putting on fat, okay? Now, when it comes to your progress for that, people are like, well, how do I know? How do I figure that out? How much muscle am I putting on? spoiler alert, you are not, if you gained like 5 pounds, you did not put on muscle. Like if you gained 5 pounds in like a month or 2 months when you start weight training, you did not put on muscle. That is not what's happening in 2 months. Unless you are, unless you are roided out of your head and you just like are on a massive amounts of steroids as a female, it's likely not happening. Okay. Beginners, when they are newer to weight training, they will notice muscle changes much quicker than somebody like myself, right? Like I've been training for the better part of the last like 20 years with weights. So for me, changes in my physique are going to be based off of me going into like really focused periods with maybe like specific body parts, being more strategic with my nutrition. I have to work a lot harder to make changes to my physique than somebody who's brand new when it comes to putting on muscle, because I've pretty much maxed out my genetic potential for muscle as a female. And that's something that a lot of us don't realize, is that your body's only going to be comfortable carrying a certain amount of muscle. And then if you are going to put more on, that is going to require more effort on your own personal behalf. So that would mean I would need to eat more. I would need to eat in more of a protein surplus. I would need to really be strategic about my training and my progressive overload, which is just a fancy word for every time I get my ass in the gym, I'm pushing harder than the last time. Okay. So that takes extreme focus. It takes dedication beyond anything I'm really interested in putting in right now, because I'm fine with my amount of muscle. So walking out of the gym bulky or lifting weights for a year or 2 years or 3 years is not going to make you bulky. Okay. It's a matter of knowing kind of the common sense behind how our bodies put on muscle, and honestly being female, right? Those two things. We do not carry enough testosterone for that to be the case, right? And even men with the levels of testosterone that they have still are, using some type of enhancement. Not all of them, clearly, but like men are still having to do those things. Okay. If you are gaining, like I said, 4 to 5 pounds in a month, 2 months, when you start weight training, you're definitely putting on body fat, or you're carrying a lot of inflammation. Maybe you're overtraining something. There's something else going on. You're likely not just putting on muscle. Okay. That is definitely very, very rare. Now, just to kind of circle back to the whole point of that is, if you are putting on too much body fat, that, my friends, is when things start to look bulky. Okay. That is when the fat lays over the muscle. That is when you can kind of feel that little bit of like squish over things. And it's because muscle's creating that nice, beautiful shape that we all want. And then the body fat layered on top of it is creating that bulk, that it's giving that appearance. So when it comes to the trading piece of things, because we talked about the diet piece, none of this really matters if you aren't training yourself properly, okay? With the right exercises, the right intensity, super important. You'll see if, if you are over on my Instagram, I've kind of been doing this little series of videos that's like, if you're doing this exercise and you think you're weight training, you're wrong, which is like things like you'll see in a lot of like group fitness classes, which is like, a squat and an overhead press with like a dumbbell, or like a lunge and a bicep curl, or like, I call them meathead burpees, which is like a dumbbell up down, right? Where you have dumbbells and you're kind of like sprawling yourself on the floor and back in and doing like a burpee. While yes, you are using weights, that's not technically weight training. You are not intentionally going into the gym to actually build muscle and get under some heavy resistance that makes sense for specific body parts. So with that being said, if you aren't training properly, you're not going to stimulate your body enough to create the response it needs to lay down new muscle tissue. Okay. So I generally recommend 3 times a week for my new ladies when it comes to getting in the gym. Okay. So 3 times a week, if you are not weight training is phenomenal. In fact, when we get new women at the studio and they want to train, and they're like, my friend comes here, I really see her results, and, she comes 4 days a week. We're like, okay, don't do that. You've never done this. Let's start with 3. Okay, get really good at 3. You're going to see some phenomenal results for a long time getting in the gym and lifting heavy weights 3 times a week. Okay, either by yourself or with a trainer, something, getting in the gym 3 times a week. Okay, you're going to see some really great results. Kind of circling back, you can eat all the protein you want, but it's not going to naturally build your muscle. So you can't just like eat protein, go do like a group fitness class or like a spin class or a boot camp class, and you're gonna like all of a sudden look like a fitness model or a girl on the cover of like a fitness magazine. That's not gonna happen. You can eat all the protein you want. You're not naturally gonna just build muscle like that. You have to stimulate the muscle enough for it to change its shape. And this is why it's important, if you've never trained and understood what it feels like to get into a training session and really kind of push your body. It's uncomfortable, and a lot of people don't like to do it. And that's a huge reason why a lot of people don't stay successful in their health and fitness journeys, especially when they start some kind of new goal, is because oftentimes we do not push ourselves hard enough, as hard as we need to create that stimulus for our body to say like, oh, there's this new stimulus we need to adapt to. Let's create more muscle tissue to withstand that. That's what's happening. So if you're not giving your body that response, it's not going to change. It's not going to change, which means you're probably not going to see that result if you want to change the shape of your body. You could do cardio till the cows come home. You can run. I wish I had $1 for every woman that I've met over the past 17 years that is like, oh, I just started running because I'm trying to lose a few pounds. Don't do that. Just don't do that. Honestly, you could start with your diet first and probably make way more progress with working on that than just lacing up your shoes and going for a run every time you feel like you gained a pound or 2 or you feel chubby, right? I hear that all the time. So you need that consistency. You need that consistency of a few days per week, getting in, stimulating your body, making sure that you are indeed challenging it enough, and progressively training and creating some kind of overload. And that just simply means, my friends, that you are pushing yourself in the gym harder as you get stronger. Simple enough, right? Sounds simple enough, but yet a lot of times, if we're not conscious of that, or we're not aware of that, or we're not proactively working towards that, we get comfortable, right? Like, I'm guilty of that too. We get comfortable. We get in a routine. We're just going through the motions. We go to the gym. We're doing 10 to 12 reps, 10 to 15 reps, something like that. And we're just kind of going through the motions and wondering why nothing's changing. If you're feeling great, your energy's up, things like that, your exercise is not in vain. However, if you are really struggling with your results and you want to see change, then you definitely need to know that your body is adapting. And if you don't change that stimulus by giving it a little bit more to push through, then it's not going to change. Now, this does not mean, and I don't want this to get misconstrued or misinterpreted, this does not mean that when you go in the gym, you change your workout every day, okay? Or every session that you go in, or every week, you're like constantly changing it up. Someone somewhere came up with this theory, like, I don't know, probably 15 years ago, that your muscles need to be confused in order to grow. And people took that, and I think the person that maybe came up with this was well-intentioned in saying that your muscles need to be challenged when you get in the gym for them to grow. Confused is not the right word. Confused makes you think that when you go in, you need to change it up every time because my body needs to be confused for it to change. That's not the truth, okay? If anything, you know, bodybuilders can dispel that myth hands down, because if you look at somebody who has sculpted an incredible, like, stage worthy physique, even if that's not your goal, right? And you see, wow, they really understand how to shape their body, because that's really what bodybuilding is. And that's how I use it in terms of working with lifestyle clients, because I've gleaned so many important lessons, not only from discipline and diet, but how you truly are the sculptor of your physique when it comes to weight training, is that bodybuilding is onto something, right? They are definitely onto something. Even if you never want to look like that, they comprehend bodybuilding in general as a sport, competition wise. The comprehension of body shape change is there if you are smart enough, right? Like, you get it. If you want to change your lower half and you want shapelier legs, it does not make sense to just go running or to go do a bunch of excessive cardio. That's not changing the shape. That's just making them smaller. But once they get smaller, what lies beneath? Is there muscle shape there? Is there muscle tone there? If there's not, your legs are just going to be a smaller version of what they already were. And most women don't want that. They're like, I love the shape of, you know, they'll show me a client picture. You know, I get that a lot, is I saw this client, I want her body. And I'm like, okay, well, that's her body. Genetically, that's how the muscle falls on her body. We can do the same things and probably get a similar result, but it's going to look different because bone structure, genetics, body fat lays different on people. But the premise is that sculpting of the muscle has to start with weight training, and then seeing those muscles is going to come by way of your nutrition. I know, it's not fun.